And we're live.
Cool. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Hello, everybody.
Whoops. Oh. Again.
Okay.
There we go.
Hello, everybody. Yeah.
We're all set. We can hear you and everything.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us at Angular Nights and Angular World Tour. So I'm super excited. It's I think it's the first event that I'm actually hosting with streaming. So thank you, this for organizing the streaming technology and for making this whole thing happen, actually. Okay, so after just talking about how excited I am, let me introduce and what we're going to have today. So first of all, I'm Shmuela Jacobs, and you're here at the Angular Nights meetup, and we're hosting the Angular World Tour. So what is this? The Angular World Tour is organized by local communities like this one, together with this .media. And this .media helps us, like you see with the technology here, with streaming and everything and organizing, but also connecting us to Angular team members so they can talk about what's new in Angular. And in addition, we also have other speakers from the community. So today we have Emma Twersky from the Angular team, who's going to talk about the state of Angular, what's new and what's going on. And we have Tracy Lee, and she's the founder and CEO of This Dot. This Dot is a consultancy for web development, and they're organizing lots of great events, workshops, and trainings. So this is a great opportunity that we're collaborating with them. So Tracy is going to talk about getting involved in open source, a quick start guide for all of you. And then Meital Valenci, which you can see here. She's become a real expert in testing Angular applications at her job in Varonis. They're doing like really large scale applications. So she's going to present several common use cases and how you're going to test them. And this is really exciting because this is Meital's first ever public talk, and it's in English, and it's in a super interesting topic. So that's really exciting for me. Thanks, Meital, for doing this. So I'll just do a quick introduction about myself before we dig in, and just a word of inspiration. Yeah, so if you can hear a little bit of Hebrew, that's because we're Israelis. We're based in Israel, Meital and I. Like I said, I'm Shmuela Jacobs, and I started developing computer programs during my master's degree. Now, I was looking for a web development framework when realizing that everything goes to the web. And then I completely fell in love with AngularJS. And then soon after, Angular, without the JS, came out. It was released. And I started working with it and teaching about it. And that's how the meetup, Angular Nights, actually was created. I simply wanted to share my knowledge and invite experts to learn from and get inspired from. I'm also the founder of ngGirls, where we organize free workshops for women to learn Angular so that they could get also excited about web development just the way that I am. Now, in the past 3 years, I've been a cloud advocate at Microsoft, but I've recently resigned and I decided to start my own business of training and consulting, of course, with Angular, the love of my life, one of the loves of my life. The other loves of my life, my NG boys. So I'm an NG mom. I have 2 NG boys, Nadav, who is 4 years old, and Asaf will be 2 years old in July. And they and my husband, Chagai is actually into React, and that's perfectly fine. He keeps, all of them keep reminding me the important things in life. And a huge part of my joy in life is my family, watching them grow and develop, well, not developing Angular application yet, but developing other skills and, dancing and smiling and playing. It's just a huge, huge joy. And another thing that's important for me is the community. So like I said, I love to inspire people and teach them, but especially inspire them not only about Angular, but to try out new things and find new opportunities and be courageous about seeking a job that they really love and enjoy both professionally and socially. So in order to be at my best in these domains in life, I really have to take care of myself first and foremost. I have to find the right balance and keep moving towards places and goals that make me happy, and away from situations that continuously cause me unwanted strain and stress. So I encourage all of you to take a minute and think about your life. Is it going to be what you're thinking about, what you want it to be? Is it going in a good direction? Are you satisfied with where you're at? Think about maybe doing kind of a spring cleaning in your life and get fresh energy to keep doing what you love and being where you feel pleasure and excitement. So this is my short message to you this season. And I'll keep you updated through the meetup group on upcoming events and opportunities. So please follow us on Meetup and on Twitter and Facebook. And that's it from me. I'm going to give the stage to the experts. First, Emma Twersky from the Angular team. How are you doing, Emma?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so I am here. My name is Emma Twersky. You can find me online at Twersky, pretty much everywhere that there's social media. And my pronouns are she, her. And I work at Google. And specifically, I work at Google on the Angular team. So today we're going to talk about the state of Angular. I have some slides, and then actually the last time I gave this talk was like a month ago. And since then, a lot of cool stuff has sort of officially been decided for the next couple months. So I'd like to do like a little bit of a sneak preview for the future as well. So to start off, something that we spent our time during COVID talking about, and sort of like that spring cleaning Shmuela was just talking about, is we sat down as a team and talked about what our core values are. And at the core, we want to create a platform that app developers love to use to build great apps. So for developers out there watching, we want to make sure that you're happy with what you're building. And at the end of the day, we want you to build things that people love to use. So we have users, the developers, using Angular, but we also have to think about those end users and make sure that we're creating experiences that are optimized for that, whether that be like really focusing on performance, because we know that at the end of the day, if I go on my like shopping website, I want to be able to check out quickly and like not see a really long loading screen. I want to make sure that the developer writing that code is happy with the experience of writing it, but I also want to make sure that that end user is happy. And then really my favorite part is I want to make sure, and we as a team want to make sure that we're creating a community where everyone feels welcome. So communities like ngGirls, Angular Nights, all of these communities are welcoming, and excited about developing with Angular. So to dig into community a little bit, for me, community is huge. I joined the team right at the beginning of COVID. And so a lot of the community I have interacted with is online, and I'm super excited to meet people in person one day. But really, as you all know, a framework or any technology can only go as far as the community is willing to take it. So anyone listening to this and anyone developing in Angular or part of the front-end community are phenomenal, and we've felt so welcomed by being a part of that. So the Angular community specifically, so part of that community is the idea that Angular is developed at Google, right? So the Google enterprise that develops Angular really wants to interact with that community. And in order to do that, we want to make sure you know how we're using Angular at Google and being transparent about what exactly we're using Angular for and why it's important that there's that community in the open source around it. So Angular developers within Google there are thousands of engineers authoring Angular code and about 1,000 new engineers learning Angular every year. And something that I think is really cool is that even if you're not writing Angular at Google, any code being merged into any repository at Google is going through Angular apps. So like our version of a browser-based IDE is Angular. Our version of like an internal GitHub at Google is Angular. So even if you're writing like internal Android system code, I don't know, you are opening that PR in an Angular app, and Angular is helping contribute to all code being merged in at Google. And even being written in it. So I think that's really cool. And we're consistently growing. So at Google, in 2020, we had about 2,000 Angular applications. And in 2021, we added an extra 1,000 applications. So Angular applications are growing very quickly. People are starting new ones every day. And these represent like the smallest application from like, what am I going to eat at the cafeteria today? That's only internal to employees, all the way up until Firebase or Google Cloud or some of these like major enterprise flagship applications. So if you think about each one of those 1,000 new applications, they're on a big range of how big that code base is. But I think that's really cool. So as you can see, the line is clearly going up or trending up for new applications. And specifically at Google, some of the recent things that we've landed in Angular have made a massive improvement on the Google Angular story. So by migrating to Ivy within Google, we saw a 90% reduction in computational resources, which is about 50 minutes of a faster build time for that largest Angular application. And if you think about what that means that if there's like 1,000 engineers working on that large application, we're essentially saving the equivalent of like 3 whole employees over the year of just build time. So there's like 3 extra employees on that team now because they're not sitting waiting for an extra 50 minutes to build. So pretty significant changes there. Now, if we go back to community, I just wanted to sort of build the story of like how Google is using Angular, because at the end of the day, the really cool thing about Angular is that it's open source. And I think this talk goes perfectly transitioning into Tracy's talk, talking about how to contribute to open source, because the really cool thing is that Angular thrives because of the community and because it's open source. So There's a million ways to contribute. Everyone thinks like the only way to contribute to open source is to go into the Angular repo on GitHub and like fix a bug or like contribute a major feature. But there's so much more, right? So pull requests, obviously, like I think if you did Family Feud, that's what you'd get as your top answer. But opening issues and feature requests, right? Like you are using Angular in ways that we're not thinking about and vice versa. And so the benefit of that is that like Shmuela is developing an application for ngGirls, let's say, and like really needs a feature to be able to like, oh, I've dug myself into a hole. Has a new idea for an issue or runs into a bug. Then by opening that issue on GitHub and letting the team know and resolve that issue, it's not just benefiting her version of her Angular app, it's benefiting anyone so that nobody else is going to run into that issue in the future, right? Same with feature requests. There's been really cool feature requests that have come out that have made Angular easier to use, simpler. A really big one is typed forms. Is a feature request / issue that is going into version 14. That was the #1 issue on the Angular GitHub. And that, again, came from a community member who said, hey, like using forms in Angular could be better because strict typing and TypeScript could do a lot of the logic that I'm stumbling over in my forms. Like, what if we added typing? Let's see, commenting on issues. So like you don't even have to open the issue. If you have an idea or if you're having a similar experience, sharing your stack trace is really important and really beneficial. Same with participating in RFCs. So RFCs are open requests for comment, and that is a way for our team to literally say like, hey, we want to change something about Angular. We want to add this feature, or we want to make a design change to like the design of Angular. Like, what do you think about it as a community? And it's an open design review, the same way that if you're on an engineering team, you might do a design review of a new feature, but it's for the entire community to say like, hey, this doesn't work because of this, or like, I'm concerned about this use case. And 1,000 minds are better than one. That's the whole point of open source. So we've seen a ton of success in opening up that program and running just a continuingly large amount of RFCs compared to other open source projects. And then finally, responding to surveys and interacting with us on social media. So like maybe something's not large enough for an RFC, but we're happy to always throw it in like a survey or just like a tweet with a question. And we're always looking for feedback. So just so you know, we are always looking at all of the feedback that you all in the community are giving us, and we're trying to make sure that we're responding to that. Similarly, once you've contributed, we want to make sure you know that like you're not alone in your adoption and use of Angular. So NPM in just the last year or two, I guess now, saw a growth from 1.4 million downloads to 2.6 million downloads per week of Angular. So that's a massive growth of new Angular projects, new Angular GitHub, like developers using Angular. And keep in mind that this doesn't include any projects that are taking place in private repositories or anything off of NPM. So for example, GitHub and NPM are like the sources we're using here, but Google doesn't use either of those. So this completely excludes that like 3,000 apps and thousands of developers using Angular at Google. And many other large enterprises follow similar practices of not using public NPM. So I think that's pretty cool. Clearly, you've seen a trend of us growing. And again, our team has hit some major milestones on social media with over 400,000 followers on Twitter, over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, and a ton of new content taking place there pretty much every day, if you're ever interested. So I want to take a minute to look at the RFCs. And I'm actually going to go a little off script and show you the actual RFCs. So in the last year-ish, we've run about 10 RFCs, almost 12, so about one a month. And if you go to the Angular GitHub discussion tab, you can literally see like this one is open right now, but recent ones include standalone components. So this is like the under the hood, like not the APIs that will actually be standalone components, but under the hood, what is standalone components going to look like from like an API perspective of like, how are we going to make this work? And standalone components are the idea that ng modules or any like Angular module files are optional. So you can create a simpler Angular component directive or pipe. Similarly, we followed that up with strictly typed directive forms. This was what I was talking about earlier, of this idea that the number one GitHub issue is strict typing on forms. And so we had a team of engineers on the team actually implement this and come up with a design pattern based on community work. And so there were actually community members who had packages that had prior art that did a lot of this. And so we incorporated their designs and came up with a comprehensive design review. And this was completed and will actually be fully in version 14 in the next, let me check my calendar, in the next month and a little bit-ish. And then finally, the open RFC, which is why I'm pivoting to make sure you know about this right now, is standalone APIs. And this is the actual design of how you as a developer would develop and write standalone components, directives and pipes. So what would those components look like? What do the APIs to create those look like? And there's been a really good amount of discourse in like, okay, so if this is what my component looks like, let's see if I can find this quickly. Oof, that word comes up too much for me to search. Anyways, there's a lot to read here, but if you would like to read more about what that actual component would look like, definitely head to the Angular repo discussion because there's a lot of cool stuff there. So those are just some cool things happening in V14. And again, all of those RFCs were run since the last release, and all of them will be in the next release in some capacity, either under developer preview or fully in like these reactive forms. So super cool. In addition to that, we recently released version 13, which included IE11 removal, a lot of cool stuff that comes with that, the Angular package format. And I'm going quickly through a lot of this stuff because, to be honest, this is kind of old, and what I really want to focus on is version 14. And so, like I alluded to, version 14 will be releasing in, let's just say, June. But like early June, if you were going to put it on your calendar. And there's a bunch of really cool improvements. So it shouldn't be any surprise. The funny thing about open source is like, if you want to make a big splash of like a new feature, that's not really possible because it's all happening in the open. So you can go to the GitHub repository right now and know what's going to be in it. There will be release candidates being cut very shortly that will really spoil any surprises of what's in it. But if you're not looking at those places, I want to give a highlight of some of the really cool stuff. So those RFCs will make it in, including developer preview of standalone components, strict typing on forms, but we're also doing some other really cool stuff. Let's see. One of the really cool things I'm super excited for is extended template diagnostics, which is this idea that, let's see if I have a video. Oh, can I not? Yes. This is the idea that you can create an extended diagnostic pattern to throw warnings, to throw errors for like common Angular errors. So here you have the banana in a box error, right? Which is where instead of doing your brackets inside of your parentheses, you flipped that. That's like a super simple developer syntax error, right? Like I just accidentally hit my brackets before my parentheses. But it won't compile and your Angular application will like have weird data binding that's wrong. And you're like, what the heck is going on here? This is like, this should work and it doesn't. And there's no way for the browser or your code editor to know or tell you what's going wrong, because in theory, that is a valid syntax, right? There's no like typo, there's no anything there. And now we've enabled a way for the Angular compiler itself to actually say, hey, I know how to write Angular code. I know Angular patterns. And I know that typically you want to actually put your parentheses inside your brackets in this two-way data binding. So is that what you accidentally meant to do? And we'll link to docs, we'll link to resources on what exactly that means to make sure that you have full understanding of that. But that means that in your code editor, in the compiler, in the actual console, we're able to log those errors and show those things and either throw a warning or an error depending on how you configure it in your TS config. But that's pretty cool. As you can see here in the code editor, it's literally saying like, hey, just flip these. Similarly, there's a simple thing where for nullish coalescing, like, you know, those two question marks, if it's not nullable, like there's no reason to give a default alternative value because it's never going to be null and need that value. So you can just get rid of that, right? And those are, again, things that the Angular compiler can do because it has knowledge of Angular's coding, like how the Angular compiler knows how Angular compiles, right? So in theory, like that's valid syntax, but we can go a little bit further and say like, hey, for the best developer experience, we're going to help you write better Angular code. So that's really cool. The other really cool thing about extended diagnostics I want to highlight is that this is fully extendable. So we're releasing with these two, but there's a blog post on the Angular blog already that sort of explains like 300 other use cases we think this would be useful for. And we're hoping that the open source community starts to write and add some of those diagnostics. So things like accessibility, ARIA attributes, there's all kinds of really cool stuff that we think extended diagnostics is a great use case for that will make the Angular developer experience a lot better. And I went back to do all of that. Similarly, I've talked about it, strict typing for forms, but this is what that looks like, where when you create a form group, we're now going to be able to throw errors because we can actually detect the type of those form controls on your form group, which just makes it a lot easier to say like, hey, you know, if I have a cat with a number of lives and the number of lives is 9, like you can't suddenly change that to yellow. Like I know that that should be a number. Seems really simple, but is a really big value add if you've ever used forms. You know that that's really important. Similarly, standalone components. Here you have your component with your module. Now you'll be able to bootstrap with the component within that actual file, use the standalone flag to mark it as true. And there you go. So that was like a really quick version of all the cool stuff we're working on right now with a sneak peek at what is coming in the next RC and version that you can cut. And yeah, definitely go check out ngUpdate, where we will be able to show you all of those cool things. And if you do ngUpdate -- next, you can get an early preview at a lot of that stuff that I was just talking about. If you're interested in playing around with forms, strict typing, extended diagnostics, any of that stuff, definitely do that next flag. But thank you so much. And feel free to tweet me if you have any questions about everything that I just threw at you.
Thank you so much, Emma. Wow, this is exciting, diagnostics and all. Like you were talking about implementing this in an ngGirls app, and definitely I'm going to work on it. I'm gonna send you some feedback on how it goes. Yeah, and please, everyone, please use the chat on YouTube to write your questions, and also please answer my question. What's your favorite feature that's gonna be on Angular 14?
Yeah, so I have not updated these slides for version 14 because the thing about version 14, let me just like heavily preface, is that the RC hasn't been cut. Things could still get rolled back if like there's an error in them. So no promises that anything will make it. But there's something called ng completion, where there's basically like, if you use the Angular CLI, we added autocomplete to the CLI. So you can now, like, let's say you're typing like ng new CO, like, and you want to spell out component, right? Like tab will just do that, right? So full autocomplete for the Angular CLI. It's really helpful for when you're typing words like, I don't know, how many times have you written like ng serve and spelled serve wrong? So then your app won't serve. Like just write ngS tab. So much easier. So that's under a new command called ng completion, where you essentially add like a completion script to your bash profile or bash RC. But I think that's like a small one. Obviously, the big one that anyone in the chat will probably say is standalone components. Strict typing of forms might get a little bit of some competition for what people's favorite is, but there's a lot of cool stuff.
Well, I'm definitely excited about this. Wow. And yeah, how auto completion on Bash, that sounds amazing. Even though I remember always the shortcuts like ng, gc, that's what I use, but there are some commands without the shortcuts. So that's really, really fun.
Yeah, totally. The GC, you got it. The serve, I cannot spell serve. So
yeah. Yeah, I get you. Wow, that's so cool. So, so Emma, so you have here your Twitter handle, and so anyone who has more questions or suggestions, or wants to know what's new, what's coming up, you're gonna put all the updates there, right?
yeah, absolutely. Feel free to bother me on the line.
Awesome. Wow, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you on our meetup. It's really exciting, and I forget the word that I want to say. Oh, it's an honor. It's an honor. That's what I want to say. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next up, Tracy Lee. So like I said, Tracy Lee is the founder of This Dot, which is a consulting firm for web development. And but even before that, I've known her from the Angular community, even long before founding This Dot. And she's going to talk about contributing to open source. So just without further ado, Tracy, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about this, and so excited to see like how far we've come in the Angular community. You know, I remember when you first started ngGirls, and it's just been really awesome to see the Angular community evolve. So I'll go ahead and get started. Today, my talk is going to be about contributing to open source generally. Go ahead and get started on my slides. Okay. I get this question a lot. How do I contribute to open source? And the great thing is it's actually really easy to do so, which is amazing, especially in the Angular community. Everybody is so open and willing to help, which is amazing. And there's so many different libraries like outside of Angular that you can also contribute to. So a really great ecosystem to be a part of. Like Shmuela said, I am Tracy. You can find me on Twitter at LadyLeet. Shmuela is also on Twitter. Emma's also on Twitter. I'm sure Meital is also on Twitter. I'm the CEO of This.Labs. We're a 50% consultancy. It's 100% remote and worldwide. So if you're looking for a new job, feel free to come hang out and email me. Also on the RxJS core team and GDE for Angular, as well as a few other things. Going back to my day job, we love our clients. We get to work on some really cool projects. Recently, we actually worked with Minko on the Angular team to release a little bit of a starter kit for Angular. So definitely check that out if you haven't seen it. But, it's a fun place to be. So if you're interested in, finding a new career, definitely feel free to email me. This is how I make friends. And I just love chatting with people. So again, contributing to open source. Today, we're going to talk about a few things. I'll talk about like kind of how I got involved in open source. Then we'll talk about you and like how and why you might want to be involved in open source. And then we'll go over some quick do's and don'ts as well. We'll go ahead and start off with my journey. So I joined, I think it was back in 2015. I was doing a boot camp in JavaScript, and I was really excited about open source and all these cool people doing cool things. And, the first thing I did was join the community. So I went on Twitter and I started talking to people. And there were so many people in Angular talking about Angular. This was when Kent Dodds was still doing Angular Air, if you all are familiar. So that was amazing. And yeah, just got to know people. And then, this was kind of at the time where Angular was kind of like in alpha and beta phases. So I started sharing my experience going through things like Angular Material, Angular CLI, how to set it up, since it wasn't as intuitive as it is now. I needed to blog about it actually to remember how on earth to set things up because the configuration was so much. And, then I shared these things, right? Even Angular router, we were going to a new router. And so, everyone was confused. Documentation wasn't able to keep up. But, because I was sharing my experience, I became a valued member of the community, which was awesome. And then I just kept going on to meet people like maintainers. And, I went to meetups like this. I, found people online, started talking to them, found people at conferences and, just kind of hung out. It was a fun place to be. And it still is a fun place to be. But that eventually led me to the last thing, which is just contributing. Because I was such great friends with the RxJS core team folks. I, was they really needed help with the documentation. At this point in time, there was no RxJS 5 documentation. It was only RxJS 4, and life was just a little bit confusing. So, I was speaking at a lot of Angular conferences and just started talking about putting together an RxJS documentation team. And I literally spinned up an empty Angular repo and I was like, okay, here's the docs, let's go. And, the community really rallied around that. So, definitely take the, your strengths and my strength is bringing people together and organizing people around things like this. So shortly thereafter, because I was spending so much time, I became part of the RxJS core team, which was, again, amazing. So hopefully that helps you, again, show you that my journey, for example, and many others' journeys, it's not that difficult to just get involved, jump in, don't think about it too much. And that will start your journey in open source. Now, a lot of people say they want to do open source, but I think a big question is, why do you want to do open source? There's so many different reasons why, but kind of the two very basic ones are kind of functional and aspirational. So when it's functional, right, a lot of people are using Angular for work. And if you're using Angular for work and something is not working, you might need to check with the Angular team and ask them to fix something potentially, right? So, there is very if you're using Angular for work and you need something to be fixed, this is a very functional reason of why you are contributing to Angular or want to get involved in open source. The other way would just be aspirational, right? If you want to build a new career, get a new job, increase your knowledge within the technology, then that would be a very aspirational reason of why you're getting involved in open source. There's two different ways to approach it, of course. Functionally, I can tell you that your life will be so much easier if you're already a contributor to a repo or to a community before you need to ask for something. For example, you might be using Angular and you know that there's a big release and you're going to need some help. Well, I would say, be friends with Emma, and like, what does Emma need in her life? Help her, whether it's like with a documentation or whatever else she's involved in, or she might be asking for on Twitter or on GitHub repos, or anywhere where there's Angular communities. If you're helping her first, then maybe later on when you have an issue with like the standalone components, for example, and man, there's like something that just you really feel like should be pushed through because you've helped Emma, maybe she can connect you with the people that are, working on the standalone components, and, you've already developed that relationship, right? So I'm not saying just become friends with Emma because like you're trying to get something out of her, but like generally when you're joining a community and you're getting involved in open source, it's good to just like get involved because you want to be involved, right? And again, like that is really important for later if you like really actually need to ask somebody for something, because somebody coming off the street, asking somebody for something, it's not as impactful as if you've already been there and you've already been helping. If of course, like if your friends need help, if your open source friends need help and you know them, like you're much more likely to like help them first, because time is limited, right? I think another thing is making sure you're submitting an issue first and asking for feedback. There's so much that happens, and there's so many technical decisions that are being made behind closed doors that we don't have privy to all the time, right? Like you're not on the Angular team, or you're not on the ngRx team, for example. So make sure to submit an issue and ask for feedback before you start developing something. That way you don't waste your time. Finding maintainers in other forums as well. Everybody's GitHub notifications are so busy and so noisy, and it's really hard to keep up in everything. So, I tend to find when somebody needs something for RxJS, if they just message me on Twitter, I can help. So it's not that difficult, right? But like you found me on Twitter. Okay, come hang out. Okay, you asked me something. I'll respond. I'm more likely than I'm, ready and willing to respond in the GitHub issues, for example. I think the last thing I kind of touched on this was like building genuine relationships, making sure that like you are, doing it for the good of the community, right? Like nobody likes to feel used. Nobody likes to feel like you're getting to know them because you want something or because you need something, but doing it for genuine reasons, because open source is really just about doing good for the community. Aspirational is like the next Y in open source, right? So open source is a great way to build a career. And I think the great thing about this is you're not tied to a technology that you're using at work. You can actually go to the different projects and different teams and you can say, hey, can I be a successful contributor? And like, do I like these people? Right? So a great example is ngGirls, right? Like you're probably not using ngGirls for work, but ngGirls is a really cool organization. The team is really cool. And like they need help in different things. And I remember when Robert from the ngGirls team, he wasn't a part of ngGirls, and he just like started contributing and started showing up and started being useful. And then like all of a sudden he's such an integral part of ngGirls, and it was like so amazing, right? And the work he's done for ngGirls has been awesome. So like, that's why I love being aspirational. And I feel like everybody should do this. Like it's such a great way to just generally build your career, right? Like Shmuela, she was obviously amazing before ngGirls, but like just even starting that organization and doing something that she's passionate about, like people really look up to her, and, that's like helped her because people know that ngGirls is because of Shmuela, right? So, second thing, as you're contributing to things, like again, whether it's NX or ngRx or ngGirls or Angular or whatever, make sure you're solving problems maintainers want. Like, don't go and just go wild. Like on RxJS, for example, you might really think we need another operator, but like probably there's a reason why we haven't added that operator already. So, but submitting an issue and saying like, hey, why isn't there this operator? Do you think I could add it? You might get a yes, you might get a no, who knows? But like the point is you're solving problems that maintainers actually want. The third thing is helping with the documentation. RxJS recently, a few months ago, like made a recent release. And like, even for our documentation, we can't keep up, right? And you guys are, Angular developers, you're using RxJS, you're using Angular, and documentation, again, is just like always out of date once it's written. But what I've really appreciated is people just going like, hey, by the way, I was using RxJS and I updated this like to match the latest version. Here you go. I submitted a PR. Can you merge it? And it's like, yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for doing that. And then, honestly, I'm looking at that person and I'm saying, are you going to contribute more? Is this person going to stick around? Consistency and like being around and staying around is like really, really, really valuable. Jan Nicholas, for example, who initially helped with the documentation, like stuck around and really helped triage a lot of the documentation issues and has been. And, like we asked him to be part of the core team, like after a few months of doing that, because he was so amazing. The fourth thing is educating and sharing, right? If you're trying to build a career in open source, you don't have to be like writing some crazy like PRs into these different libraries. Educating and sharing is so valuable. Like, you look at some of the people within the Angular community, like John Papa or Dan Wallin or Deborah Karada, for example, and they've made code contributions, but they're not known for their code contributions. They're known for like their amazing ability to educate people. And, most of the people who are learning about Angular are learning through their medium. So definitely educate and share because, that helps. And that is open source. Educating and sharing is open source. So a few do's and don'ts. I just want to remind you all to like make sure to have compassion, right? Maintainers are usually working for free on nights and weekends. It's difficult. And also maintainers are people, right? Like, sometimes people are single threaded, for example, and they can only handle so many things at once. So make sure you're treating them with care and you're not like treating them like crap, because you probably won't get your way or get any help. Also, make sure to be professional. Open source, even though it's not your job, it's definitely a place where people like maintain and respect professional relationships. So making sure you're continuously doing that. Making sure you're assuming the best of intentions. I was just like laughing about like Twitter open sourcing their algorithms, and like, man, I know everybody's going to go in there and start complaining about the code and this and that and whatever. But we always have to remember, whenever you go into any project or look at any code, you weren't there when it was written. You don't know what trade-offs they had to make. Writing code is always about trade-offs, right? So always assume the best of intentions. Nobody wrote code maliciously for some reason. And open source especially is a tireless and thankless job to keep everyone happy. Code of conduct as well. Just abide by a good code of conduct, right? Make sure that you're always doing that, because even though a project might not have one, there's like, people do get banned for reasons. Thankfully, Angular has a really good code of conduct. Now for the don'ts, making sure you're not like acting or being entitled, making sure you're not the biggest priority for a maintainer. For example, Shmuela mentioned she has like 2 babies and a full-time job, and then she has ngGirls, and then she's trying to do this meetup stuff. Like, everybody has so much in their lives, and trying to juggle that is like so difficult. So just because somebody's not responding to you doesn't mean that they don't think you're important. It just means that there's other important things happening. Also, make sure to follow up, right? Like, for me, sometimes I forget about something. I think it's a priority at the moment. And then I say I'm going to do it, and then 10 other things come up. So sometimes you just have to follow up, but follow up within reason. Don't be annoying. Don't email about something 10 times a day. And, other is like, just don't complain, right? Everybody's trying their best here. And, they always say, if you don't like a library, then like go use a different one. So I hope this talk was useful to you all and kind of inspires you all. I'm always happy to chat on Twitter @LadyLeet. So feel free to message me. I'm super excited about Meital's next talk. It sounds amazing. But, if you want to, come hang out and work at this dot, you can always feel free to email me, Tracy@this.dot. And I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Tracy. Again, I'm reminding you, if you have any questions for Tracy, and Emma is still here, please drop the questions in the chat, or just write what you're excited about in Angular and open source. So that's been really, really cool. I want to share with you, Tracy, another idea, which I hope sticks again. It's something that um, I participated in a few years ago. The JavaScript Israel meetup group, they organized a special meetup where we heard about open source projects, and then each one joined a group just working
Oh,
on
that's cool.
issues. Yeah. So even if you're a total beginner, then you can start digging into the code with other people, and try to figure out what's going on. And even if you haven't contributed a single line of code, but maybe you got into it a little bit more, or like what I contributed that night, because I knew a cool command on Git called Git. Bisect, I think, which searches for a specific Git commit where the issue started. It helps you search for it in a smart search. I forgot the word for the search. Binary. Yeah, things come back to me in binary search. So that's what I could contribute. The Git commit where it all started, you know. So shout out also to Shai Resnick from the community who organized this meetup, and maybe he's watching now, and I hope he's gonna organize more of those. That was really, really good. So Tracy, maybe you can initiate something like that also with us.
Yeah, that definitely sounds super interesting. Yeah, I'd love to talk about that more for sure.
Yeah, awesome. So I loved your talk, and it actually inspired me also to go back and dig into the open source code and not be afraid, and just to first talk to people about it, and ask questions about it, and then if needed, then start submitting issues and contributing. It's so inspiring. Thank you. Let me see if there are any questions in the chat. Not yet. All right. So Tracy, again, if anyone wants to talk more about this, then they can find you on Twitter at Lady Elite. Right. Anything else before we move on to Meital with testing?
No, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, thank you so much. Like you see, I'm still super excited and honored to have both of you here in our meetup. It's really an amazing experience for me. So,
well, we love you and we hope to see you soon, especially like Emma. I don't know if you've ever been to Israel, but it's like so good. It's such a good trip. So you'll have to make that on your like bucket list.
Send me, this is what I want in the chat. I want, what are the conferences or places that you recommend in Israel? Because I want to come.
Israel is the best, and they take you on the most amazing like speaker event. It's so good, Emma. It's my favorite.
And people,
you have to go.
I want to give a huge shout out. Shmuela can pronounce my last name because it's Israeli. So
love it.
It's the one meetup where I know my last name is safe. So.
Sure. I'm glad to do. Really, is it so hard to pronounce usually? I don't know, Twersky.
Yeah, well, if you know about Miley Cyrus and twerking in the US, it's very similar. So, yeah.
I don't have this connection in my mind. I'm too old.
That's fair. Anyway, Yeah, super excited to be here. Excited for this last talk.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Awesome. So I'm really excited to present Meital Valenci. Do you have any last minute advice for her as first time speaker in a meetup?
Just keep doing you. It's going to be amazing.
Okay.
And we'll see you at ngConf next year.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much. So I'm super excited. First time Meital has started working with Angular. What was it at ngGirls or was it before?
No, it was like 7 years ago.
A little bit before ngGirls.
Yes.
And you came to the event
Yes.
as a mentor.
Yes.
Yeah. And we've learned a lot from you, and we're going to learn a lot from you. I watched Meital rehearse and already got really, really excited. And I suddenly know what to do with my Angular applications and testing them. Like it suddenly sounds like solvable in my mind. Doable. Yeah.
Yes.
So, Meital, I'll let you introduce yourself and talk about tests in Angular. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay. Hi, everyone. So I'm very excited to be here today. Thanks for having me, Shmuela. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Okay. This one. Okay, so today I'm going to talk to you about how to write unit testing for Angular apps. Just a minute. Okay, so first of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Meital Valenci. I'm married. I have 3 daughters. And in my free time, I like to do Zumba and then salsa. I'm a front-end developer for the last 10 years. I'm working now at Varonis. I'm a senior front-end developer there. And I'm also a mentor at an organization called Ba'ot. Ba'ot Motzot is an Israeli organization that helps women obtain their next position as software developer. So in the last 2 years, I'm working at Varonis. Varonis is an Israeli cybersecurity company. We help customers protect their data. We find the vulnerabilities in their data and help them to heal them. In Varonis, we always aim to write clean code, use best practices, and ensure high quality of products. And one of the ways to ensure the product is in high quality is to have high coverage of automated tests. This way we can test all the edge cases and we can run the test at any time and see that our application is not breaking and everything is working. So today I want to share my knowledge with you about testing, what I've learned in the 2 years in Varonis. So what are we going to have today? First of all, I'm going to do a short reminder of testing concepts. Then I'm going to show you the demo app I prepared. And then I'm going to show you like hands-on how to write testing for this application, like use cases for services, DAM components with input, output, smart component, sort of an integration test, and also debugging the tests. Okay, so let's begin. So when we're talking about automated testing, we have the concept of the testing pyramid. And this is a concept that divides the test into three groups. We have from top to bottom, we have the end-to-end testing, where we test application from end to end and we try to replicate real user scenarios. The second layer is called component test or integration test, and we try to integrate a few models and see that everything is working together as we expected. And the third layer, which we'll be dealing with it today, is called unit testing. Unit testing is all about taking a small scope of code and testing that it's behaved like we want. As we go up the pyramid, we have less tests because the tests are harder to write and takes more time, and we end up with the top of the pyramid, we have manual testing. So if you're a developer, probably most of the time you will be writing unit testing, and a lot of them, okay? And that helps us to ensure we catch the bug at the lowest level and we don't end up in production with huge bugs. So when we're writing today the unit testing, we're going to use Karma. Karma is the test runner, okay? This helps us run the test. And Jasmine. Jasmine is one of the most popular JavaScript framework for testing web application. Okay, so I want to start and show you a simple example of a test. Okay, we're going to go over the structure. So first of all, we have the describe part, which we describe what we want to test. Okay, for example, we want to test this add function. Okay, this helps me also to divide my test files into sections, and it becomes more organized. The second part is the it, okay, which I write what kind of test, what is this test all about. I want to test here, for example, that this should return me a sum of two numbers, okay. And the first part, I have the prepare part. I declared here first number, it's 2, second number, 5, and the expected result. I expect it to be the sum of the two numbers. The second step in the test is to act. I call my service service.add with the two numbers, and I have here the result. And the third part is where we're going to use the Jasmine and do the assertion. I expect my result to equal the expected result. Okay, so this is a basic test structure, and these are the steps we're doing. Okay, now we're going to move on to the demo application and see everything live. Okay. So I prepared here a small demo application using the ngGirls CLI. This application has a list of posts. Okay, in this case, I have here like 5 posts. Each post has a title, has a body, and it also has a number of likes, in this case 63, and also a like button. When I click it, it becomes blue and the likes number increased by 1. I'm going to do it now. Okay, you see it's 64. I'm going to do it again. It increases up to 3. Okay, so this simple application, and I'm going to show you now how I'm going to test it. Okay, so let's move on to the code. Okay. Okay, so first of all, let's go over the application and see what we have here. So this application has one service and 2 components. Okay? If we go to the app component HTML, we see we have here a component called app post list. Okay? This component has in the HTML like an ngFor. It gets a list of posts and does an ngFor and displays them. And we have another component called app post, which displays the post details. Okay, what we saw here, the post detail, the title, the body, and all the like section. So the post component, let's look at the HTML. It has the title, body, and all the like section we saw in the demo. And I have here a service. This is the third thing. I said 2 components in one service, so this is the service. It's called post service. Okay, it has a dependency in the HTTP client from Angular. Okay, and it has 2 public functions. The first one is get post, and the second one is update post like. Okay, the first one, get post, returns me an observable of an iPost object. Okay, what is this object? This is a simple object, has a user ID, title, body, a likes, it's a number, and is liked is Boolean. So it returns me an array of this object. And let's see what is going on inside the function. So I'm calling the http.get with the base URL, and I'm getting the post. I do a splice. I don't want to get all the posts. I only want to get the first 5 posts. Okay, so I take only the 5 first posts, and then I manipulate the data. I add to each post a random number of likes. Okay, I have a simple function that returns me a random number, and I also set the isLiked property to false. Okay, so 5 posts and manipulate the data. Okay, so let's see how we're going to test this service. Okay, so I have here a post service spec file. This is where I write my test. Okay, I'm going to split right. We're going to see the service, and next to it the application. Okay, so I think it's too big. Okay, just a minute. Okay. Okay. So let's see. So I have my service here, and this is the test file. Okay, let's see how I'm going to do it. So first of all, I have the describe. I describe what I want to test, the post service. I have here the parameter. Okay, and you see this service has a dependency in the HTTP client. It's important to know that when we're doing the unit testing, we need to mock our dependencies. Okay, so here we want to mock the dependencies, assuming that everything is okay, and test only our code. Okay, I want to see that our code is okay, assuming everything else works. So I have here a mock of the service I created. I use Jasmine create spy object. I tell it which service I want to mock, and then I can put an array of the function. I need a function get. You see here I have a get, and later I will show you I have another one that uses a put. So I mock the service with the 2 functions, get and put. And before each, now I want to create the module. I want to create the service and the dependencies. Okay, so I have here an array of providers. I tell it I want to provide me the HTTP client with the mock service I created here above. And I want to test bed is Angular class. I wanted to inject the post service. Okay, and it create me a new instance of the service. So this is how I create my service. And the first test I want to write, it should be created. A simple test. I want to see that the service has been created and all the dependencies are okay. So in order to write in order to run this test, I can do here like an F, okay, and save. And in order to run all the tests, I need to do in the terminal this command, npm run test, which runs the ng test. Okay, so I already did it here. And now we see one test and it succeeded. We can also see it in the browser. We see here, I'm sorry it's a little bit small, but you can see post service should be created. The test has succeeded. Okay, so now I want to write more tests. First of all, I want to write test for this function, the get post function. Okay, so how I'm going to do it? Okay, I want to add all my missing imports. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so now we're talking about testing observables. When we're testing observables, there are 2 methods we can do it. The one is called marble testing, and the other one is called subscribe and assert. Today, I'm going to show you the subscribe and assert way of doing it. So I have a describe here, get post, okay? And before the test is running, I want to tell it that I want my mock service. When I call the mock service function get, I want it to return me a mock object. I added here a mock object. I'm going to show you a simple array of posts. Okay, I have here an array of 6 posts. Okay. So I want the service to return me this array of posts. And the reason why I'm using here the spread operator, I want it to return me a new object each time, because I don't want that if one of the tests accidentally or manipulates this data, it can cause failure of another test. Okay, so I have a new object each time. So, okay, now we're testing the observable. So we need to call, now the first test I want to test that it actually returns me the 5 posts. Okay, so I'm calling service get post. I do a pipe take 1. This is how I unsubscribe and get the result. I'm subscribing. You know, observables are lazy. If we don't subscribe to them, we don't get the result. So I'm subscribing, I get the post data, and then I'm using the Jasmine assertion. I expect the post data length to equal the number of posts, the 5 posts. Okay, let's see it running. We're going to do here an F. Okay, we can see that this test is succeeded. Now, if I have here, for example, 4, okay, and I'm going to run it again, now the test is going to fail. It's going to tell me in the terminal, okay, 1 test has failed, and it's going to tell me even why. Error, I expected 5 to equal 4. Okay, also I can see it here. It tells me expected 5 to equal 4. So this is how it looks like when it's failing. So now I'm going to return it to what it was. Okay, and it will run. Okay, and succeed. Okay, so everything is good again. And we also have to use the done callback function. It's very important. This function tells the testing framework that here is where our test ends. If we accidentally forgot to put it, okay, our test can pass without going through the assertion. So it's very important not to forget the done function after the expect. Okay, so this is the first example of testing observables. Now I want to test also that my post data has a random number of likes, and the isLikes is set to false. Okay, I want to check that the data here is what I expected. So how I'm going to do it? So again, I'm going to call service get post, take 1, unsubscribe, and then when I get the data, I can go over all the posts in the data, like I do a .every, like for each, and I verify that all the post likes is set to false. So I expect this to return me true. And I can do, for example, expect that the post likes is set to a number, is a type of number. Okay, so this is another example, what kind of assertion I can do. And then I can take the first post, okay? I know it has a random number of likes. I don't know what is the number, but I know it's a number. So I can do in Jasmine like a special assertion, Jasmine any. Okay, so I can expect the post like to equal Jasmine any number. You can also see it like Jasmine any string or Jasmine any date. It comes very handy when we're doing a date testing. So this is also a special assertion I want to show you. And the done function, which we saw earlier, I have to put it here to tell the testing framework that here is where my test ended. Okay, so this is the observable part. Okay, I'm going to close it now. And now we're going to see the second test I have here. I have here another function called update post likes. It gets a post object, and it returns me a promise of this object. Okay, and what it does is it increases the likes by 1 and set the like to true. Okay, and then it calls the service put method with this post and return me the promise of this post. Okay, so let's see how we're going to test this one. Just a minute. Okay, so okay. Maybe I should do it a little bit smaller. Okay. Okay. So I so describe update post likes, okay? And I have here a mock object. I have likes number 100 and the is liked is false, okay? And I have the updated post. The updated has a like true and it has a number of likes 101, okay? And I have here a spy. I will explain about it. So I wrote here 3 tests. They are the same, but they have different syntax. I wanted to show you a few different ways you can test it. So first of all, I have here a spy. I have to tell my service, my mock service. I call here an HTTP put. So I have to tell my service, listen, when I call the method put, return me this value of this updated post, okay, what we have here with the true and the 101. And again, I like to do the spread operator to get a new object each time and not one test like fails change the mock somehow and fails the other tests. And I can put it in a variable, this spy. Okay, so let's see. I want to test that when I call this method here, that my HTTP service is actually being called with the correct data, with the post, with the increased likes, and the likes is true. So how I'm going to do it? The first way of doing it, I'm going to close this, okay. The first way of doing it is using the async, okay. Async, and then I can put await. So I do an await service update post like, and I give it the post item, what we saw here before the update. And I do expect, I expect this spy, okay. I listen to the service. I expect this spy to have been called. This is a special assertion with these parameters, okay, with this URL that has the post ID and the updated post, okay, with the correct data. So this is one way of doing it. Async and await. It's very clean. I like to use it, okay. The second way of doing it is with the fake async. Okay, I have here a missing import. Okay, it's with the fake async. Again, I'm calling service update post like with the post item, and then I do the assertion. Expect this spy to have been called with these parameters, URL and the updated post. This is another way of doing it. So using fake async. And the third way is with the done function like we did in the observable. So I do service update post like and pass it the post item. And then I do the expect. I expect the spy to have been called with these parameters and calling the done function. Okay. So these are 3 ways like I can test the promises. Okay. In this case, these 3 ways can work. Okay. So these are the tests I'm going to do to the service. If I'm saving it, we're going to see I have here forgot to put the F. Just a minute. Okay, I want all the tests to run, so I'm removing here the F, and now it's gonna run 6 tests, and you can see it here. Post service, all of my tests, you see the sections, update post likes, get post. The sections create me like an order in the test file, everything is running and is okay. Okay, so great. So now I'm going to show you how we can test components. So moving on, we will start from the post component. You remember here in the demo, I had here in the demo, I had a simple post component that displays all the post details, the likes, the title, the body. I'm going to show you how you can test it. So this component, just a minute, I'm closing everything else. Okay. Okay. So this component is very simple. It has an input of a post object. It has an output, event emitter of a number. And once this like function is called, we have the firing of the event emitter and we fire the post ID. Okay. In the HTML, we display the title, the body, the likes number, and we have the click on the like, which fires the event emitter. Okay, so this is the component. And okay, how are we going to test it? Okay. Okay, I'm going to remove this. Okay, so because this component, you see here, it has an input, okay, and it has an output. So the best way I can test it is by using a host component. I'm going to wrap the component in a host component, okay? So I define here a host component, and in the template, I put my component, my app post component, okay? And in the host component class, I can define the input, the post item I need for the component. And also I have the function that it's being called once this event emitter is called. Okay, so I'm using a host component here. A page object, I will explain it later. Okay, and I'm doing describe. Describe, I want to test the post component. I have here the host component. I have the component feature. This is an ngGirls class that allows us to create the component, to get access to the native element, to the DOM, and check that the DOM is being displayed as we expected. And before each, I need to create my components, the host and the post component. I need to compile them and to create them. Okay, so this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to configure the test model and I'll do a declaration for these components. And I need to create the host fixture. This is where I create the component and create the component instance. Okay, and what is this host fixture detect changes? We need to remember that in the Angular application, we have change detection running all the time. But when we're doing the test, we don't have change detection. If we need it, we need to call it ourselves. Okay? Otherwise, we will not see the changes as we expect in the DOM or event in firing and things like that. So we have to call the detect changes. So this is the way we're going to do it. So the first test I have here is should be created. I expect my component to be truthy. Let's run this. We'll see now I have one test and it succeeded, should create. Okay. And now, for example, I want to test that the title of the post is being displayed okay. Okay, I want to do a test on the DOM. So how I'm going to do it? Okay, so I want to display that I want to check that the title is okay. So should show me the expected title. Okay, then I can go. Let's see the HTML again. Okay, again. Let's see how. So I have here the title. Okay, and I have here a class post title. Okay, I will show you later why I added this automation ID. But this is the HTML. So in the test, what I'm going to do is I'm going to query this. I'm going to do host fixture, native element, query selector, and select it by class, text content, and this is how I get the text. And I'm going to do an assertion. I expect that this text should equal the host component post item title. This title I gave here in the mock, in the post item. Okay, so I can run this test, and it's working, and it's great. Let's see. So you see here also we can see the component, and the test is running and everything is okay. Okay, and now I'm going to show you like a cleaner way to doing it. Instead of having like selectors for the DOM element in the test, okay, we can create something called a page object. And this page object can have all our DOM elements, all our DOM selectors in one place, okay? So we can reuse this page object. If we have changes in the code, we can change only there. And it gives us also IntelliSense, okay? So it's much cleaner. So I have here the page object. It's a class, okay? Let's see it. So it gets in the constructor the element, the HTML element. And then it has a set of getters. Okay, get for the title, the body, the like button, add like section, everything like I want in the component. And you can see for the title, for example, I use query selection automation ID. Okay, I didn't use the class because the class can change, and if it changes, then my test can break. Okay, it's more prone to errors. So I had it here a attribute, special attribute called automation ID, and it's used for the test purposes. And I can select this attribute, and this way I know that my automation ID is there, and it makes the test more reliable and less easy to break them. So this is the page object. And so here I'm going to do a new instance, and I'm going to give it the native element, okay? And then it can query the elements in the DOM. So instead of writing this code, I can write it much cleaner now. So I have the title test, and I just select page object.title. It already has the selector inside of it, and I do the assertion. Okay, the same assertion we saw before. Title text should equal the host component post item title, this title. So I advise you always to use a page object. It's much more cleaner, and always to use also automation ID and not to rely on classes, CSS classes or ID or something like that, but to add this automation ID. Okay. So this is the test about things in the DOM. Let's see how I'm going to test now. Not this one. I want to test. Okay, I want to test the event emitter. Okay, how I'm going to do this. So let's see. Okay. So I want to check that once I do a click on the icon, as we saw here, the event emitter is fired. Okay. And we get the event emitter with the post ID we see here. Okay, so let me just straighten this. Okay. So first of all, I want to do here a hook, and after each test, I want the host component post item is like to set it to false. Okay, it's like a kind of reset. So let's look about the first test. So I want to test that this event emitter is called. Okay, so first of all, I have a spy. I want to listen on the host component of update likes. This function, I have it here. Once this event emitter is called, this function is called. Okay, so I do a spy on it. And then I want to select from the DOM the like button. Okay, I have in the post, in the page object, I have a selector, a special selector for the like button. You can see it here. Okay. And then I'm doing a click, and then I have to call the detect changes. As I said, we don't have in the test detect changes running automatically. We have to call it ourselves. So I'm calling the detect changes, and then I'm do the assertion. I expected my spy to have been called with. Okay, this is a special assertion to have been called with this ID, the ID I gave in the host component. Okay, ID number 1. So this is how I test the event emitter. Okay, I want to show you one last test for this component. As we saw here in the demo, when I click on the like icon, I get here a blue color. Okay, I have here an ng class, and I'm adding a class. So I want to check that this is working also. So how I'm going to do it, I'm going to show you the HTML. I have here the ng class. Okay, once post is liked, this class is added, the liked class, and I get a blue text. So again, I set the host component post item like is true. I put it like. I call the detect changes, and then I can do the assertion, page object add like section. I have here a special selector for the add like section, okay, also with the automation ID. And then I can query class list contains likes, and I expect all of this to be true. Okay, so this comes in handy when you want to test like CSS class being added, things like that, CSS properties, for example. So these are the tests I wrote for the component, okay? And we have one last component, one last thing I want to show you. So we have the, just a minute, I want to close everything here. We have the post list component, the component we saw earlier with the ng4. Okay, this is like a smart component. You see, it has a dependency of the post service. Okay, it has a post property. On init, when it goes up, it called the first service get post, do an unsubscribe, and get the post. And it has another function, update post likes, that is called, once the event emitter is called, you get the ID here, and then it's going to find the post and send it to the service and update it and replace it in the post list with the updated post. I want to show you the test I have for this, and I have here like a special test that does the whole scenario, that does a click on the button and we see the number of likes increase. Just a minute. Okay. So here, because I have a component with no input, I don't have to use the host component. I can test it directly. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, just a minute, I'm going to declare the component fixture. Okay, I have a mock for this service. This service, I create a mock object, and I have two functions, the get post we see here, and the update post likes we see here. I have here like a mock array of posts I want to the service to return me, and before each I want to create the module, I want to create the component, so I'm declaring the post list and the post component, and in the providers array I provide my mock service, my post service mock. Okay, and also I tell this service, once I call the get method, the get post method, return me this mock, this array of two posts here. Okay, and as we saw before, we have the fixture. I'm creating the component. I have the component instance, and I have here a special page object. Okay, as we saw earlier, I created a page object. This page object also in the constructor gets an element. Okay, and I have a getter for the post, which returns me a post component page object. Okay, it returns me the post component, the component that displays each post. It's a page object, an array of this. Okay, so I have to, I'm going to show you in the HTML. Like it does an ngFor on the post, and I marked in automation ID post item the component of the app post. Okay, and in the page object I do a query for this automation ID, and each item I get, I create a new post component page object and put it in the array. Okay, and now we're going to see it live, and I also debug it, and you can see it very clearly. And of course, fixture detect changes like we saw earlier. So I have here a bunch of tests, but I'm going to show you the interesting one of them, this one. Okay, and we're going to also to debug it together and understand it. So when we want to debug our test, we simply need to add a debugger. Okay, and then we're going to save the code. We're going to see that this test is running. Okay, I have 3 tests. We want only one to be running. Okay, we have here more tests. Okay, just a minute. I'll do here an X. Oh, still, someone is hiding. I'm gonna find it. Another one in it. This one, I found it. Okay. So now I have only one test running, my test. So let's see how we're going to debug it. And this test actually does the whole scenario of clicking the icon and increasing the number by 1. So let's debug it and see it together. So it runs here. If we want to debug the test, we need to click here on the debug. Okay, then do an inspection. And we can go to the sources tab and refresh, and our debugger will stop in the test. Okay, so here it is. I want to show you first of all that the service has returned me the 2 posts, okay? And the first one has 100 likes, okay? This is the one we're going to change. So let's debug it together. I can, of course, put breakpoints and everything. I like putting a debugger because it shortens time, okay? So the first thing, I want to access my page, my post list page object, okay? And it has post. I expect it to have 2 elements because I have 2 posts here. So you can see I have 2 post component page object. Okay, this is one and this is the second one. So I take the first one and then I want to see how many likes it has. We saw it's 100, but I want to select it from the DOM and see it actually is 100. Okay, so I have here the post component selector we saw earlier. So I have the number of likes. It's 100 likes. Okay. Then I do a click on the button. On this button, you see it becomes blue. Okay. I have to call the detect changes. Okay. I'm going to explain also why I have to call the flash. You see it becomes blue. I have to call the flash. Why I'm calling the flash? Because I'm using here async, fake async, okay? And I need the flash because I have in this function, okay, once the like is called, I have in this function, I have a promise, okay? And I wanted to, this promise will return me a value. So flash, like the name, it says everything you have async tasks in the queue, you need to execute them and give me the result by this point. So this is how I make sure that this code is actually working and give me the result of the updated post. Okay, so I have to call the flash. And then I want to see that the number of likes has changed in 101 likes. So we can see it in the DOM, you see it here, but I want to verify it also in the code. So I select also the number of likes from the page object. You see I have here 101, I do a parse int, and I expect the number of likes before plus 1 to equal the new number, the 101. And this test succeeded. Great, we see that the like button is blue. We have 101 likes and everything is okay. And that's it. So we saw here like how to do the whole scenario and how to debug the tests. Just a minute. Okay, so we saw example today of testing observables, testing promises. You remember I showed you 3 different ways. Testing components with input and output, using a host component in order to wrap the component up, using a page object to handle the DOM selectors and put it in one place and cleaner code, how to mock services. I use the HTTP service, I mock the responses, and all sort of Jasmine assertion syntax like to equal, to have been called with, Jasmine any. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I would love to answer questions if you have. And you can find me on GitHub. I will upload this demo and you can download and play with it. And also you can find me on Twitter, and this is my email. So thank you very much for having me, and I hope you learned from that and you can start testing your application. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meital. I don't know if you can see me. Okay, so this was amazing. This was a really good talk. Thank you. And we have also a lot of people really enjoying the talk and a few questions.
Okay.
First question, where was it? Why do you use expect assert over Jasmine marbles?
You mean subscribe and assert over Jasmine marbles, where actually I read about the marbles technique of testing observables, and it just seems like more complex and has a special syntax. You write your A, B, commas, things like that, and I find it less convenient. And the subscribe and assert, I find it more intuitive and more easy to use. Of course, Marble has advantages when you want to test things that have like a delay or something like that. But in most cases, when I do my testing, I always use the assert and subscribe, and it's fine and it's good. Just to show the syntax, you need to learn the syntax like very good for the Marble testing before you can start using it. So it's like a learning curve, and I find the subscribe and assert like more easy and more intuitive.
Yeah, and my answer in the chat was that we're gonna expect a whole new talk only about marble testing, but I'm not sure. Your answer was better.
Yes, I think that if I know Marble testing and I write my code and another developer does not know it and need to understand what I wrote there, like it's be more complex than this way of the assertion and subscribing.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Charlie Greenman, for the a great question. I saw another question by Rochelle Rubinov, but I didn't really get that. Maybe you understand what they're talking about.
Rochelle is from my team. Hi, Rochelle.
Okay, so probably you know what they're talking about. Do you have some examples to negative test?
A negative test? Negative test, for example, like if I do, for example, I think you mean like if I do an if-else, if I have like an if-else in my function, and I want to see that the condition is met, and only what I have like in the first condition has happened, and what I have like in the else did not happen, I can do it also. I can do an assertion like not to have been called. Okay, something like this, and this is how I can do it and see that it's not being called or not being changed. I guess that's what you mean.
Okay, because I guessed something completely different, but I really wasn't with enough tests in my head to.
We'll talk about it tomorrow, Rochelle.
So that's a better question, a better response to what I would. I don't know. Anyway, a good question, good answer. Another question that we have, another one from Charlie Greenman. How did you gain such sick testing skills?
Okay.
What did you read, watch, work around, etc.?
So I have to say that I've been working in Varonis like in the last 2 years. And before that, I worked 10 years in the industry, but before that, I used to write tests, but not so much. And when I come to Varonis, like every code we write a whole bunch of tests. So I find myself writing end-to-end testing with Selenium, with Test Cafe, with Cypress lately. And then I find myself writing the unit testing. So like in 2 years, I have been writing all sorts of testing. You know, I also read in Google. I also see examples from our code. And I also encountered many things I need to test, like set timeouts, complex components, like integration test with a lot of components. So I read in Google, like I see also in our code, so we have examples. And I think like when you write many tests, like you already understand, and you already, even if you go from one library to another, you can know what is the basis and what you're trying to find. In the last month, I wrote like a new test with Cypress, like end-to-end testing, and it was my first time working with Cypress. And like I used the Udemy course, and I heard about it, and then I started to play with it and write the test. And of course, all the problems I encountered, I solved them, and later I explained to my team members how I worked with it and what were the problems, and shared my knowledge. So Udemy, Google, team members, eventually the test will pass.
Awesome. So in short, just start doing tests.
Yes.
Right? Just
Yes.
start doing them, and you're gonna learn from your experience. If you're working somewhere where they really know the importance of
Yes.
tests, which is truly important
Yes.
for the confidence of yourself, of your coding, of the team, of the product.
Yes. Sometimes the tests are hard to write, but once you get it, like the test will serve you for the next few years on the application, and you always know that everything is okay and your test is running, and like it has a huge value.
Yeah. I really, really want to quote Kenzie Dotz, what he said about tests. So Kenzie Dotz is also a really brilliant developer, web developer, and instructor. And what he said about testing is that when you write a code and you test it manually every time you work on the code and make changes, then it's just one instance of you. He said one instance of Kent checking the code each time. But when you write tests, in unit tests especially, then every time you run the test, every time you make a change, you have like hundreds or thousands little Kents or little Meitals
Yes.
who are there just because it's something that you wrote and you feel confidence with,
Yes.
and you can trust yourself. So probably you can trust 1,000 instances
Yes,
of
I
yourself.
know that you covered all the edge cases and all these things, like in the test.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, what's our next question? We have another one here. Can we test services in Silo? Agent 007. I don't know who that is, but
I also don't familiar, but I'm sure there are testing frameworks like for everything. So in C# we have, for example, the Selenium. Okay, so you need to see what you want. You have like Docker testing, you have Selenium. If you want end-to-end, you have Cypress. So I'm sure every framework like has the testing framework for it also. Like it comes together.
cool. And another question from Agent 007. Have you used Jest, and is it better, in your opinion, than Jasmine?
Well, I actually haven't got a chance to use Jest. I used only Jasmine, but I think it's just a matter of different syntax. Like I think the bases are the same, only different syntax. I don't think there is much difference between them. I like Jasmine. I like the Karma. Like it's run fast. It's very intuitive. The assertion is very simple. So I like Jasmine, but I'm sure Jest is good enough also.
Awesome. I don't see any more questions, but we're here for another minute or two. If you still have questions, put them in the chat. And otherwise, you know where to find us. You know where to find Meital.
Yes.
I also tagged her on Twitter, so you can go through my profile, and we'll put also all the links in the meetup event in the comments, and here in the YouTube description.
Yes.
I see a lot of people loving your talk.
Great.
And even some who are not from Varonis, really. So it's not only, but it's also great that you have your friends who came to watch you and gonna celebrate with you tomorrow. I see people from Israel and people who are not from Israel who want to come and visit and please talk to us, and we'll be really excited to host you and to show you around. And I see people who have names that I'm familiar with, and some new names. I'm really excited to see everybody participating and coming here to the meetup, this very, very special meetup. And again, you can see how excited I am. I'm sure you are too.
Yes.
We have another question here.
Okay.
From Milan Ivanov.
Okay.
Can I combine Angular with Workbox?
Workbox. Okay. I haven't heard about Workbox. I don't know what it is. Like, it's a framework. It's new.
I'm gonna dig into that. I also
Like, the common way to test Angular is using Jasmine and Karma, and end-to-end, like using Test Cafe, like using Cypress. This is what I'm familiar with. A Workbox is something new. I haven't heard about it.
I'm not sure that it's about tests, a Workbox. I don't know. Let us know, and we'll dig into that. It's interesting. All right. So I think we'll wrap up. And so again, you know where to find us. And
You're gonna have a link to my demo on GitHub. You can download. You can play with it. You can see more tests. I didn't have time to show everything, but you can see it there and use it.
yeah, that's really really important. So Meital's GitHub, because they can't see your the slides, but we will put the link. But it's also MV80. Oh, now we're gonna see the slide. Here it is.
Yes.
Thanks, Tara. MV80 and Twitter vmeital80 and the email. So take a look at the GitHub repo. Awesome. So again, I really want to thank everyone. Thanks to this.media, who's organizing the Angular World Tour in many different meetups all around the world. And this has been such a great experience doing this with you. Thank you so much, Tracy Lee, the CEO of this.media, for the awesome talk, for the inspiration to just get into open source, which is super beneficial to start digging into code and contributing. And like you said, even if it's like starting with small things, typos, documentation, and then gaining the confidence to do more, that's amazing. There's so much work to be done, and it's not called open source just because. It's open source because it belongs to everyone, and we can make it better. Thank you again so much, Emma Twersky, for talking about Angular, the vision of Angular, the special features that we have in version 13, and what we might look forward to in the next versions, which is super exciting. I really hope. I always see the Angular. Not only, it's not a framework, it's more than a framework and a platform in the ecosystem.
It's life.
It's well, for me, certainly. One of the first words that my son Adav said was Angular. Yeah. So I really love seeing it keeping on living and developing, and I know for sure that the Angular team is getting a lot of feedback from the users. Why I know that? Because sometimes I participate as a GTE in the calls and in the feedback sessions. So keep using it and give feedback about what's working well, what's not working so well, what features would be useful for you. Please keep on doing that. I think Angular is awesome, and one of the reasons for that is the community.
Yes.
Really, I love the community. So thank you again, Emma. And thanks, Tara, for being behind the scenes here with the streaming and making sure everything works well. Thank you all. Thank you all
Like
for...
it was an all-girls meetup.
Oh yeah, wow! Like I didn't even realize that
Yes.
this is what's
ngGirls.
happening, but yeah, totally. Yeah, we have lots of awesome ngGirls in this meetup. It wasn't planned this way. We didn't know who the guest from the Angular team was going to be when we first organized this, but I'm really happy to have an all girls
Yes.
show here. That was really
Girls
awesome.
power.
Oh yeah, totally girl power. Thank you again, Meital. Thank you,
Thanks for having
everybody
me.
from Israel, from outside of Israel. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope to see you next time. Please also send us feedback, what you liked, what can be improved, because we would love to do this again and again. We're here for you, for the community, to share our knowledge and inspire each other. So, thank you
you.
so much. See you.